Welcome back to Rand on Real Estate. I am Greg Rand, your host. This is 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. Our number here is 800-848-WABC. My website is ownamerica.com, and we're going to talk about some things that I posted on ownamerica.com. I write a blog whenever I go on the air called the Show Prep. And the Show Prep is where I go and do research for the show, and I post up the graphics and I post up the charts so that you can, if you're interested, go and check out visually what I'm talking about in your ears here. We're sponsored today by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Their website is investmentpropertyjacksonville.com, and their phone number is 904-677-6777. And I'll tell you why you might want to call them. What they do, there's a new industry emerging over the last several years. People who, like me, saw that on the other side of the housing crisis, there was going to be an investment boom, but also saw there's a whole lot of people out there who don't know how to do this and who aren't totally comfortable being a landlord, right? So maybe you can relate to that I have an Uncle Richie. I know I can make a lot of money. I can build wealth over a lifetime in real estate, but I do not want to get that dreaded phone call about the roof leaking. I don't want to hear about, people always say the toilet overflowed, which is funny because nobody's going to call a landlord. It's an aside here, but nobody calls a landlord when the toilet overflows. They grab a plunger and they clean it up themselves. But it's just sort of an example that everybody conjures up of getting that middle of the night phone call from the tenant. The other reason is that you can't necessarily always buy near where you live because maybe the price points are too high. Now, what Jacksonville Wealth Builders do is they are a turnkey investment company. And I'm right now in the process. I converted my IRA over to what's called a self-directed IRA. That means that I can direct it myself instead of giving it over to a stockbroker. And by being a self-directed IRA holder, I can then own real estate in the IRA. It's an awesome thing because all the profits on the rents, all the appreciation, all of it grows tax deferred. And if you see that on a chart over 20 years, it's like a snowball building up wealth. And I'm working with Jacksonville Wealth Builders myself because what they do is they find properties, and I'll describe a few of them in the next segment. They find properties that need to get fixed up. They then fix them up. They then put a tenant into them, or they start looking for a tenant and they sell it to you and then shortly thereafter put a tenant in. They sign 2-year leases or longer with everybody. So you're literally buying a property that is all fixed up. They put a new roof in, they upgrade plumbing, they upgrade electric, they do appliances and kitchens if necessary, but all the real heavy-duty stuff, they do all brand new right up front. You buy the property, you have a tenant in place with a multi-year lease, and you get a return, and they manage the property. And so it's beautiful. They'll actually fly you down to Jacksonville to take a look at the neighborhoods, look at some of the properties they have available. It's a really, really impressive organization. I met one of the founders of it, Greg Cohen, and the rest is history now. We have a great relationship, and I feel very comfortable giving this advice to people that are relying on me for good advice because of the experience that I'm having with them personally and because of the market they serve. They are Jacksonville Wealth Builders. They're not going anyplace else. And I've actually asked him about whether he's going to expand to other cities, and he said no. And the reason is that he, just like me, thinks that Jacksonville's about the best story out there for investing in real estate. So let me tell you about that. And we got some calls lining up here. Stay on the line because we're going to get to you, I promise. But let me lay the groundwork for Jacksonville. Professional real estate investors think like the Home Depot. All right? They want to know, is population growing in that area? Are people moving there? Are they going to want to own real estate? Are they going to want to keep that real estate up, whether they be homeowners or investors? And is that going to be the case for decades upon decades to come? In other words, stand back and show me the big picture, the biggest of the big picture. Demographic trends, migration patterns, job growth. Give me all those things that tell me that population is going to grow, because if population grows, demand for housing grows. People like living under a roof. They're funny that way, so they're going to need houses, and if the population is growing. So how do you gauge whether the population is growing? Well, first of all, look at migration patterns, okay? Where are people leaving from and where are they going to and why? And one of the biggest stories in the country for the last 30 or 40 years is the state of Florida. People from the population centers in the Northeast are filing down there. The recession is not slowing that down at all. In fact, it's accelerating that trend because the quality of life is better and the cost of living is lower in Florida. That's the entire state. But Jacksonville has something special going on. In addition to traditional demographic migration to the Sun Belt, Jacksonville has a port, and their port is expanding. Why? Because in 2014, on the 100-year anniversary of the original opening of the Panama Canal, they are expanding. They're finishing the expansion and cutting the ribbon on the expanded Panama Canal. Now, why is that important? Because the biggest ships in the world right now that are bringing bringing stuff, mostly from Southeast Asia, most of it coming over to the U.S. They land in California and on the West Coast. And whatever of that stuff needs to get to the East Coast gets on trucks and trains and gets brought across the country that way. Why? Because those big, gigantic ships can't get through the Panama Canal. They're too big and the canal is too little. Well, that's what's changing. They call it post-Panamax, okay, the maximum that you can get through the Panama Canal. Those ships carry 3 times more cargo than the stuff they can get through there right now. So when they cut the ribbon in 2014, you're going to see a huge amount of cargo that used to land in the U.S. in like Long Beach, California. It's going to come through because it's cheaper and it's easier and it's faster to get to the East Coast to come all the way through the canal instead of taking it off in California. What does that mean? That means all the ports in the Gulf of Mexico and all the way up the East Coast have the opportunity to get all those new customers. And with all those new customers, all those new jobs. And of all those ports from, Houston, Texas, all the way across Tampa, up through Florida, up to, to Norfolk, Virginia, if you research it, the port that has done the best job of government cooperating with business and commerce to dig the port deeper, to add more infrastructure, to make it so that it is the most attractive place for all those new ships to land, Jacksonville's it. So with that, you see, this is a city that is the 13th largest city in the country by population, but it's much bigger than that by land mass, okay? So it's not crowded at all. The average age in Jacksonville is 34 years old, okay, younger than the national average. They have 2 Navy bases there. And one of the things that I've learned is that if you're in the Navy and you want to retire, you have a lot of say as to which base you retire at. And a lot of people choose the bases where there are going to be jobs for them to get after they retire. And in droves, they're choosing Jacksonville. So military folks coming in because when they retire, they want to get one of those new port jobs, the port expanding, all the services that are designed, that are needed to support all that expansion, all the companies that are moving into Jacksonville. Again, quality of life is through the roof. It's gorgeous weather. It's a beautiful place. Cost of living is low. The average price of a single-family home in Jacksonville is just above $100,000. You heard that right, just above $100,000. So you take all these things together, and what does it tell you? It tells you that because, in addition to the natural growth of real estate markets by virtue of population growth, you have the added benefit of demographic trends and migration patterns coming down to the southeast. Then you have the hyper-added benefit of the Panama Canal expansion, something that is happening. It's not a maybe, it's a definitely. And if you go to my website, ownamerica.com, you're going to see in that blog called Show Prep for May 13th radio show, I've got some links in there to some articles that'll give you a jumping off point for you to do your own research. As I said, I want to influence you, but I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm not a stockbroker who says, trust me. I'm saying, take a look at this, okay? Read a couple of articles, and you're going to be astounded by the billions of dollars that are being invested in Panama Canal and in Jacksonville to prepare for what is very likely to be a doubling of the population over the next 10 years. And again, they all want to live indoors. So when you've got a place like that, and then you add to that the fact that Jacksonville has gone through some pain in the last few years. We're very big on short-term pain coupled with long-term gain. When you can find those two things present in the same market, you've got a winner. You've got a place that all boats will rise with the tide, no pun intended. So I also have a chart on the blog that shows that Jacksonville's home prices have basically gone all the way back to where they were 10 years ago, which means the foreclosure crisis has impacted prices, which means you have upside. Jacksonville is a winner. When we get back from the break, we're going to take a couple of calls, and we're going to get into some case studies. This is Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC, brought to you by Jacksonville Wealth Builders. Back in a moment.